Well, hey, folks, welcome to the pre-show. Welcome to the program. This first 3 minutes, if you are not a regular here and you don't know this already, is just us getting ready and getting set up to go on air over at the radio station, which is OdysseyRadio.com. So you can go on over to Odyssey Radio, ODYSY radio.com. And you can listen to this show in its audio format only. Or you can come on over and join us on the YouTube tonight or my Patreon channel. Both are Scotty Roberts. Scotty Roberts at Patreon, patreon.com/Scotty Roberts, and youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. So there we go. All right, just getting all my lighting set up here too, so I'm not too fried on the screen. There we go. And I hope you're all doing well. It's good to see you all. You can come on over and join the chat room if you are not already in there. Hey, Viking Off-Roading, that's Michael. Good to see you. Philip Blair, good to see you. Sean Strike, good to see you. I haven't seen you for a while. And good to have you back in here. And tonight I went public rather than just on Patreon because I think it's an important topic. I'm going to tell you something. I might get a little preachy tonight. So bear with me on the preachiness. I think it's an important topic. We've been talking about the Constitution. We're going to keep it up for tonight, especially. I got to go get something to drink. Hold down the fort. We got 1 minute till we go live on radio. Stand by. I'll just be right out here, not very far away. Woo. I'm dry. And I need to get my throat wetted. Hey, field guy, good to see you. And let's get something to drink here. It's not coffee, but it's caffeinated. And I need that right about now. Been running all day. Been in the sun part of the day. So preach on, Scotty, says Sean Stroik. Well, I will do my best. I can tell you that. Let's see. All right, there we go. What do you guys? You still like the background? Rainey says, I don't like that background. It's a little dark. You could do something with more flair. What do you think? Let me know. Cheers with my Subspace Radio mug. Okay, here we go. Going dark. Stand by.
The Intrepid Radio Program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Happy Wednesday evening, everyone. Welcome to the program. I am Scotty Roberts, your host here on this, my show, the Intrepid Radio Program. Now, you might say radio? Is it really radio? It's kind of a podcast. Well, it's a little bit of both. We broadcast on the radio station, OdysseyRadio.com, and that's ODYSY radio.com, spelled a little differently, Odyssey. And that's our radio station where you can listen to the show in its audio format only, or you can come on over to my YouTube tonight. You can watch the video simulcast, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can also go over to my Patreon, patreon.com/Scotty Roberts. You guessed it. And so come on over to my Patreon. If you have not come over and subscribed there, please do. There is a minimum set of $4 a month over there where you can catch every broadcast we do, even the extra little things that we don't broadcast normally. And we aren't going public with every show anymore. So come on over. What you do by doing that is you help me grow this show. You help me do some of the things we can do to make it better. So if you like this show and you got about the amount of a cup of coffee spare change once a month, come on over and donate that over to my Patreon channel. That helps me. Patreon, as you know, it's a page, a website for artisans to put their wares out there and say, help support. Michelangelo had the Pope. I got you guys. So if you like what I do and you like what this show is about, come on over, show it, lend a hand over there, help us grow this thing. And let's see where we can go with it. That's enough on that. And I wanted to show you one thing before we got started here. Where did I put them? It's here. So here they are. Well, I got this new t-shirt. I was going to wear this today for the show, and I didn't. I just thought it was a cool t-shirt. I liked that. Zion. So I like that. Anyway, I was laying on top of what I was going to show you. These are my quotable Shakespeare cards. Now, I may have shown this the other night. Maybe it was on the private show over on my Patreon. You see this little box? I found this box of mine in storage in another box. And I had not misplaced. I knew it was there. I just hadn't looked for it for years. But inside this box are all my, and those of you who don't know, I've been reading tarot cards for years. Since 1986 was when I started reading tarot cards. That's damn close to 40 years. But these are all the little sets and different cards I've collected over the years, and they're all thrown in here. But I had, whoops, and I just dropped a bunch of them. Maybe I should read those, and find out what's it got to say. I dropped a bunch of cards. I'll get those later. But those are my cards. But in the tarot deck, I found this deck of cards that I had gotten a long time ago. Quotable Shakespeare. And it's just a deck of cards. They're not oracle cards. They're not tarot cards. It's not going to tell your fortune. But it's pretty cool stuff on these cards. And it's got quotes from Shakespeare. And so let's just kind of shuffle that up a little bit. And maybe if there's any oracle quality to these at all, take whatever the message says and see what you think of it. What's on the top? This quote that we've all heard a million times. Did you even know this was Shakespeare? First thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers. Anybody know what play of Shakespeare's that was from? Here, I'll read what it says on the back. This is from Henry VI, Part 2, Act 4, Scene 2. And it says this. I got my lights so low in here, I have to, sorry about that. I got to hold the card over here so I can read it in the light. This is Dick the Butcher. Dick the Bitcher. That reminds me of So I Married an Axe Murderer. Mike Myers playing himself, playing a character, and his father, his Scottish father. And Mike Myers' girlfriend asked him what he does for a living. He goes, well, I'm a bitcher. And she said, I'm sorry, what? He says, I'm a bitcher. You know, I cut meat. I'm a bitcher. So Dick the Bitcher, he uttered these lines, was one of several followers of Jack Cade, a rebel who fomented a brief workers' rising in England during the reign of King Henry VI. Cade's rising began in Kent on May 1415 and led to a fierce battle at London Bridge in July of that year, 1450. And during these 2 months, Cade and his cohorts attracted some sympathy from English workers with their utopian plans for redistributing all the wealth. And in Henry VII, Part 2, Shakespeare has Cade say, all the realms shall be in common. There shall be no money. All shall eat and drink on my score, and I will apparel them all in one livery, that they may agree like brothers. At which point, Dick the Bitcher offers his suggestion about the legal profession. And Shakespeare's age was aware of the communistic impulse represented by the previous century's Cade. A peasants' revolt in Germany in 1526 had a fallout throughout Europe, not unlike Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. And Henry VI, Part 2, offered Elizabethan audiences some of their first sympathetic glimpses of working class characters. Cade, rising soon, however, turned into mindless plundering. His rising turned into mindless plundering and bloodshed, including the beheading of Lord Say, also a character in the play. And even after Cade was killed in the fighting, his corpse was beheaded and quartered as punishment. He apparently did not have a good lawyer. But the card says, first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers. There is our quotable Shakespeare for the day. Had to share that with you. We might do that from time to time. I love Shakespeare. I myself was in a couple of Shakespearean plays in my earlier life. And I played in Love's Labour's Lost. I was Sir Adriano di Armado. And in Comedy of Errors, I shared the lead role with a friend of mine who played my twin brother in that one. That Comedy of Errors, if you don't know it, is the typical old story of the twin brothers being mixed up. One knows his twin brother is alive. The other one doesn't know he even has a twin brother. They were separated at birth. The one stayed with his parents. They thought they were lost at sea. The mother was lost at sea, and the father told them all about it. And then they both had servants at the time that they were infants that their parents bought for them. You could say slaves. And those servants were also twin brothers, and they went to each of the twin brothers. So the Comedy of Errors is all the mixing up when the one brother goes into town, falls in love with his twin brother's wife, not knowing it's his twin brother's wife. And so hence the Comedy of Errors. I played Antipholus of Syracuse, while my buddy Rick played Antipholus of Ephesus. And so I remember lots of lines still to this day, 40 plus years ago. I was in that play in right around 1979, I want to say. That tells you how old it is. So anyway, that was the beginning of my love for Shakespeare. Shakespeare is highly quotable. He's highly it's fun reading Shakespeare. Once you understand the language, it's great language to read. It's great language to act. And but it's kind of like the King James Bible, which was written in the same era, the early 1600s. We don't go around using King James English if you want to talk about God. Although there are some dolts that think that's the only version they could do that with. It's a not the best version or translation even out there. And same with Shakespeare. It's we don't talk that way anymore. It's poetic language. It's picturesque. Yes, before Santa got the jetpack for the sleigh. That's right. So cheers. Santa wore a codpiece. But here we go. We've been talking the last couple of shows about the Constitution. We did an open public show on Friday about the Constitution. We did one on Monday night, picking up where we left off, talking about what the Constitution guarantees for us and what the job of the Constitution is, if you will. And some of the most important points we have covered is this. Keep this in mind. The federal government, our federal government, comprised of three branches: the executive, the legislative, the judicial. That would be the president, the Congress, and the Supreme Court. That federal government is not more powerful than me. It's not more powerful than you. And frankly, it's not more powerful than the states. The states are more powerful than the federal government. What the Constitution did was establish the fact that the states are more powerful than the federal government. And how do we know that? Because the states created the federal government. And the Constitution is the enlistment of all the laws by which the federal government must operate. And so, as we said the other day, we can use the example of God. I don't know what your religious belief is or spiritual belief is. You can say God, a creator, the originator, however you look at it. But let's just simplify it and say God, when he created humanity, he did not create humanity greater than himself. He said he made humanity in his own image, and he gave humanity rules to live by. God is still the sovereign over his creation. That same rule applies to the Constitution, to the federal government and states government. If the states created the federal government and the Constitution was a compact or a contract, they created a contract creating the federal government. So the federal government isn't even an equal party to the states. The states created it. They did not create the federal government to be greater than the states. They did not create the federal government to be equal to the states. They created a federal government to be under the states. The federal government was created for very basic purposes, to defend the rights of the people in the states. That was their job. And so when you hear people being afraid, especially nowadays, in the confusing age we live in, the federal government ain't your boss. You are the boss of the federal government. You are the boss of your states. Now, we the people, have given our states authority to write constitutions and create laws over us that we put ourselves under willingly. And there are laws by which we must comply. The states then went ahead and created the federal government, making rules under which it needs to live and comply. But we've got it all backwards nowadays. The federal government does not control the state. And the federal government does not control us. It only has control so far as the Constitution enumerates its powers. And its powers, it says in the Constitution, were delegated to the creating of a federal government. The powers delegated to them. What do you do when you delegate something? Do you delegate something to the higher up in your company? Hey, CEO, I know I'm just one of the lowly workers here, but I'm going to delegate my job to you. No. The CEO or your higher ups can delegate things to you because you are beneath their authority. So the federal government was created with the states delegating power to the federal government. The federal government is nothing without the states. And the Constitution recognizes that the states are supreme, not supreme, that's not the word I was looking for, that the states are authorities. The states have their own power. They're independent, free states. And like we said the other day, just like France can't come in, or Canada come in, or Mexico and tell the states what to do, unless they want a war. Nobody can tell the states what to do from the outside. The federal government can't either. The United States is exactly that. United States, a union of independent, free states. States meaning governments. We are independent, individual, free governments. Now, I also want to say something I haven't mentioned in this before. And this is all under the title of tonight's show, which is Peaceful Noncompliance. Peaceful Noncompliance. And I use the subtitle, We've been allowing government to assume authority over our lives for a very long time. So it's peaceful noncompliance. I would ask my friend, Reuben Fasthorse, who is the member of as a Native American, indigenous people, member of a tribe that has its own indigenous government, but that government falls under the authority of the states that made the reservations and made those governments, and under the federal government and so on. But even Reuben Fasthorse and Native Americans have the right as American citizens who are part of an independent free state within a state within the Union to peacefully non-comply. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Non-compliance on a peaceful level. Not non-compliance in a bad way, but on a peaceful level. I used this illustration last week and earlier this week of, let's say I stole Grumpy Stack's red Maserati. I don't even call it stealing. Let's say he and his beautiful wife went on vacation and I borrowed their car without them knowing it, his Maserati. And I drove it around for 2.5 weeks while they were on vacation in paradise somewhere. And they come home, they notice it's gone, and they find out I've been driving it. And so guess what? Do I get to keep it because, hey, they haven't been here for 3 weeks, I get to keep it? No, it belongs to them. They have the right to take it back. And you see, we have two things assumed. Authority. Well, two things, assumed authority and legal authority. Assumed authority never becomes a legal authority without the transfer of legal authority. So Grumpy's absence and his negligence never transferred authority to me over that red Maserati, did it? Which means he retains the right to say, no, that doesn't belong to you. Does he have to sue me to get his car back if I've been driving it for 3 weeks? No. Grumpy's having to sue me to get his car back because I've been driving it for 3 weeks is not only unnecessary, it's ridiculous and it's dangerous. Now we've been allowing government, let's move this into the illustration to the reality. All of us listening to this show tonight, chatting in the chat room tonight, all of us have been allowing government to assume authority over our lives for a very long time. Do we have to sue them to get that authority back? No. Suing the federal government to get out what legally belongs to us is not only unnecessary, it's ridiculous. And it's dangerous on many levels. Why? Because the government, to get back to what already belongs, to get back what already belongs to you from the government, is like Grumpy having to sue me to get his car back. Showing up in court, finding out that the judge and the jury are all my family members. So if the state is suing the federal government, where's the state suing the federal government? In federal courts with judges that are appointed by the federal government. When the states sue the federal government to get their power back in federal court, what they're admitting is the federal government is the ultimate authority on its own limit of power. You see? And when we sue the states to get our personal power back, what we're saying is our state constitutions are null and void, that they have no authority, and that we're begging for what already belongs to us by creative right. Now, of course, we place ourselves under constitutions. We agree and we say this will be so and that will be so. It's not that we're lawless or anarchist beneath a federal government or a state government, but we don't need to beg for what already belongs to us. We're the ones who established it. Get this right. When you look at the federal government does not own you. You own it. Now, many times we're so entrenched in this, we have to go through processes and we have to remind ourselves that we have power over the federal government. The federal government only has power over us that we give them. And we're begging for what already belongs to us by creative right. That's why we say, when I talk about noncompliance, peaceful noncompliance is the most powerful tool. Peaceful noncompliance is the people enforcing the supreme law of the land when the government is acting unlawfully. Your sheriff in your county is your most important ally in the securing of your rights. Why? Because your sheriff is not a hireling of the state. He's not a hireling of your county. Your sheriff is a constitutionally elected representative of the people. It is his duty by oath to secure your rights. It is not his duty to blindly enforce federal government's laws or even state laws. If there is one office that you can take back control of to secure your rights, it's this one, because your sheriff is the highest authority in your county, believe it or not. Your sheriff has an authority to deny enforcement of laws. Did you know that? I'm not talking opinion here. I'm not talking fluff in the sky. I'm talking the facts and whites, the black and white of the truth of the matter. The sheriff has an authority to deny enforcement of laws, state or federal or local, that don't secure your rights or work contrary to your rights. This is sheriff. This is the sheriff's job. It's a story of Sheriff Brad Rogers from Elkhart, Indiana. He stood up to the federal government. He got sick and tired of the federal government, the FDA, the USDA, coming in and raiding his Amish farmers in the middle of the night, trying to seize their weapons of mass destruction, raw milk and cheese. And he wrote a letter and furniture. He wrote a letter to the FDA and the USDA and told them that if they step foot in his county one more time without first coming to him and seeking his permission, that those agencies would have to come bail their agents out of jail because he was going to arrest them for trespass. And since the day of that letter, they have never had another problem with the USDA or the FDA because the federal government knows the sheriff is the highest authority in the county. FDA and USDA wanted to come in and nail the Amish for not getting FDA or USDA approval on their milk and cheese. For fuck's sake, may I throw in there. That's why they're always trying to co-opt them. That's why your sheriff's departments are always being offered free toys. Ooh, new cars, flashy computers, new training, mutual jurisdiction agreements. And we'll let you wear our badge if you let us wear yours. It's bribery. It's extortion. It's trickery for the sheriff to relinquish his authority to a lower power. Because you realize your elected representatives will do a lot of things when you're not looking right. But they'll never do what you want them to do. They will never do what you really need them to do. That's not to provide you with welfare and homes and health care, but to provide you with the security, the ability to secure your own rights. And they'll never do that unless you expect it and you demand it. You ever voted for sheriff? You see that on the ballot during election time? Oh, who's your sheriff? Who is your sheriff? Do you even know your sheriff's name? You voted for him or didn't vote for him in your county. But to provide you with security is the sheriff's job. The ability to secure your own rights. They will never do that unless you expect it and demand it. Some bloggers and natural food writers have hailed some of these people who talk about these things as heroes. Says the sheriff. And the sheriff responded. He said, I'm just doing my job. Remember, his job is not to blindly enforce the law. His job is to secure your rights, whether you're a conservative or a liberal or anything in between or extreme. And I will be a guardian of the Constitution for you, he said. I will not stand idly by while the rights of my country are trampled, whether by criminals or by an overreaching government. And we've learned today an overreaching government is breaking the supreme law of the land, which makes them, folks, criminals. That's the power of your sheriff. I told you all the story. It might have been last Friday. The sheriff in our county, back during the COVID stuff, the federal government was trying to enforce masks and trying to enforce all the different stuff. And our sheriff wrote a letter, a public letter, and said, I will not be enforcing any of these laws. The federal government does not have a right to impose that law. And I will not be enforcing it. You will not come into our town and make that law. It does not apply here. See ya, our sheriff said. Now, people can tell you all they want what their opinion was about that stuff. And, oh, what a horrible person you were if you didn't get the shot or you didn't get the mask or whatever. That's opinion. If the federal government does it, they're breaking the law of the Constitution. That's just one example out of endless ad infinitum examples of the government breaking the law, the supreme law of the land. That ought to be the statement of every sheriff, is that I am here to protect the rights of the people. That is his job. And if it's not the statement of your sheriff, you need a new one. Needs to be a new sheriff in town. And if you don't have representatives who understand that it's their duty to secure your rights and to not violate them, then it's your authority to take that power back and defend your own lives, your own liberties, your own properties. That's what your representatives are there to do, folks. They are supposed to defend your rights, not put forward their desires, which so many of them do. Shelley Luther did a defiant thing. You remember the story about her? In North Dallas, she owned a hair salon. She said she's going to ignore a court order. She said she ignored a court order taking my business and taking my business without due process and without just compensation. That's a violation of our Constitution when the federal government does that. The Dallas salon owner who opened up her business Friday, despite I'm reading an older story, sorry. Despite state and Dallas County shelter in place, those orders, saying she couldn't. I just know that I have the rights, and you have the right to feed your children and make income for the governor to issue an order that says I cannot operate my business is a taking of my business by that government. This happened during the pandemic, by the way. It's an old article I'm looking at here with her quote. It is for the governor to issue an order that says I cannot operate my business is a taking of my business by that government. It's unlawful. It's unconstitutional. It's null and void, and me and my staff will not comply. And Luther tore up the citation. Do you remember that story? She tore it up. Not only is it a taking of the violation of the Texas Constitution, perpetrated by the governor, by the county, and by the sheriff, but Shelley Luther spent the next 2 weeks in jail. Also had to pay a $7,000 fine. And she exposed the violation of the rights of the people. And Governor Abbott took action over what he calls a nonsensical decision. And to throw a Dallas salon owner in jail. People who did not connect those dots are now connecting those dots. And now you have a whole movement connecting the local government. This is one good thing about COVID was people's realizations of their rights over government. The federal government can't tell you you have to shut the door of your business. There has to be a legal process behind that. Yeah, there you go, Randall Flagg. Everybody else out there. Down here, they worried more about banning books than government leadership. Yeah. So you have a whole movement that started contacting local government, contacting the governor. And this has to stop, they said. These are our rights. The whole community came together behind her and created a fund to pay her legal fees. They came together to keep her open because she stood. She stood for something. What did I say in the very first show on this? If you remember, if you were here on Friday night when we started this talk about the Constitution, it all starts with one person standing up. I'm going to stand up. I am going to take a stand. I am going to say something. And usually movements begin with one person that takes a stand. I will be the one. You know, there is a funny way I taught this right to my kids. Not all of them at the same time, but my oldest kids, my 31-year-old twin daughters. We when they were about 11 years old, 12, somewhere in there, I let them watch movies with me, and I've talked about this on my show before for different points, but movies like Saving Private Ryan, which is pretty heavy, movies like Schindler's List, movies like Braveheart, which was pretty bloody, The Patriot, movies like that. And I remember telling my daughters somewhere during the movie Braveheart, it might have been after his arrest. And I told them, you know, I'm going to tell you guys something, that stand for what is right and what you know to be right, no matter what anybody else tells you to do. I used those movies as teaching opportunities for my kids. Stand for what's right, even though, and it sounds so cliche, but even though the world stands against you, if you know it's right, you stand and don't let anybody tell you what you're supposed to believe. I said, you believe what you know is true, and you act on what you know, and you stand with a fist if you have to, and you stand for your rights. You, even if you're standing alone, you stand up. My and I've told you this little story before, but it was, I think we were watching The Patriot, and my son Sam said to me, this had to be, we were watching it on, he was too young when the movie came out, and I wouldn't have taken a really young kid to that, but I can't remember how old he was, 8 or 9 years old or something. And we're talking about that movie. He watched it with me, and he wasn't too disturbed, but he was very moved by it. And all the loss of life in that movie. And Sam said to me, he's nodding off to sleep. He remembers his story. You can ask him. Nodding off to sleep, and his speech is getting a little softer, and his words a little farther between. And he said, wow, Dad, that man, the Benjamin Martin, the Mel Gibson character, he said he lost a lot. He lost his 2 sons, his home, so on and so on. I said, yeah, he did. And the most profound thing Sam said to me, I don't know if he heard this phrase somewhere else. He must have, to have phrased it the way he did. But it was the first time I ever heard him say anything like this. His eyes are closed. He's almost asleep. He says, wow. He says, freedom isn't free, is it? I said, Sam, you're right. It's not. I said, it costs something sometimes. That's what this is. When you stand alone for something, it might cost you something. When you stand for what you believe in, it might cost you something. I'm sorry, said the salon owner. You don't own this, I do, she said to the federal government and to the state. The Board of Health shut down the Attila's Gym of Belmar, but the owners disobeyed the order in dramatic fashion. They kicked open its doors, its locked doors, locked the owners out. They kicked them in, and they said, look, this is our property, and our Constitution secures our right to secure and defend our property, even if it's from the federal government, who is subservient to my state government, who is subservient to me, we the people. We're the property owners of Attila's Gym, they said. So that's Belmar, New Jersey. And they had their license revoked for repeatedly defying the order to remain closed. You cannot take this property without just compensation, they said. It's our property, not the federal government's, and without due process. And your taking of our property is not only unlawful, it's arbitrary and capricious, because the guy next door who owns the Walmart, who owns the Costco, gets to have unlimited number of people in his business, but you're telling us we can't open up. So we're taking back that power. We're keeping our business open. Guess what? They got arrested. They were arrested. Why? For defying the state's mandatory shutdown orders. Here's an unconstitutional government arresting them, and here they're out of jail, kicking down the barriers and open their business back up again. The power of 4 words. We will not comply. Or as my kids would say, you're not the boss of me. We will not comply. And if you'd been told that in 2020, that a pastor would be arrested in America for having church open to the public during a pandemic, during a crisis, by a sheriff for having church, this pastor stood in a pulpit and said, government doesn't own my church. It's under the head of God, the head of Christ. This is what he believed. He's the pastor of the church, for Pete's sake. Of course he believes what he says. The government cannot shut down my church. It's under the head of Christ. The government cannot shut down my church. And the sheriff arrested him for doing that. This is Florida, by the way. And they were running contrary to the Constitution. This is pre-DeSantis, Florida, by the way. And, or was it? Now that you think about it, I think DeSantis was governor. But DeSantis stood against this stuff too. It was second-degree crime, punishable by $500 or 60 days in the county jail. And the Florida pastor was under arrest after refusing to stop holding large services. T.J. Holmes, who was the prosecutor in the state of Florida, I have never seen a sheriff dispatch helicopters, dispatch out-of-county deputies, and hold a press conference to announce the arrest of someone accused of violating a second-degree misdemeanor. And yet, the sheriff did all of that because it's political. It's not about your rights. It's not about your health. It's about politics. And this pastor said, I am not the subject of government. Government is the subject of me, we, the people, me, the people. And if you're violating the rights that have come to me by God, he said, then you have null and voided your authority. Now, you might be saying that all these people went to jail. How is this to encourage us? Because if you don't go into it knowing what's going to cost you, you'll never have the courage to follow through. And if you don't know what it's worth, you'll never have the courage to stand up, even if you stand alone, to begin with. Life, fortune, sacred honor is what they pledged for us, the founding fathers. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. We look at, I get chills saying that right now, just right up the backs of my arms. Their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honors. We are so insulated from what happened 250 years ago at the founding of this country. I know you've heard the stories before of what happened to all the men who signed, put their signatures to the Constitution of the the Declaration of Independence. Where they ended up and what happened to them. It was almost prophetic. Benjamin Franklin said, we'll hang separately or we'll hang together, but we'll surely hang. That's what Franklin said. Whether that was metaphoric or literal in his meaning, it still meant the same thing. When the government can shut down your business, is that not hanging your family? When the government can impose unconstitutional restrictions that violate the very core of your natural rights, is not that a metaphorical hanging of your rights? You see, we gotta understand, what is it worth? They're showing us what it was worth. We become too pacified in prosperity, too lazy in our luxury, too complacent, too compliant in our comfort to realize that future generations are looking at a government that will be like Venezuela or Cuba or Russia. And that will fall on this generation, you and me. Are we bequeathing that to our descendants? It's going to fall on this generation. You see something? It, like my son Sam said as a little boy, falling asleep. Liberty costs something. It costs something to have freedom and liberty. But it costs to maintain. Can you imagine how different our civil rights movement would be today if we even had a sheriff back then that understood their duty? Rosa Parks, this law that says you have to live and sit in the back of the bus is a violation of your rights. So here's what I'm going to do as someone who's taken an oath to secure your rights. You sit wherever the hell you want on this bus, and I will sit next to you as your sheriff and ensure the security of your life, your liberty, and your property all the way home to your bus stop. Maybe we wouldn't have had the race pimps that we have in politics today, monetizing division and hate in America. I call them race pimps. They're monetizing, BLM, monetizing race hatred. If you had the law that back 50 years ago would have stood up, almost 60 years ago, stood up for the rights of their citizens and protected them. It was politics. It was hatred. So why do our constitutional officers believe that they have an obligation to blindly enforce a law and that somehow they'll be excused? Ask yourself that question. Sam Adams said, "No people will tamely surrender their liberties, nor be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved. But on the contrary, when the people become universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink underneath their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders. You did not lose your business because of ISIS or people crossing the border from Mexico. You didn't lose your job because of those things. You didn't have to get a shot because a foreign invader was forcing you to do so. America's economy, property ownership, and the liberty are in jeopardy because we're complying with unlawful authority. See, what it comes down to, it's not whether or not you agree with the principle of whatever it might be, the feel-goodism, the medical data, the whatever it might be. It's not that you don't agree with those things. You might agree with them. It's whether or not the principle is whether or not you have the freedom to say no. That is what the Constitution guarantees you. It's not a bad word. It's our duty. It's our obligation when government is tyrannical that the people of God, the people of Allah, the people of Buddha, the people of no God, that the people have a duty to not follow and not comply. It's a duty, folks. How many of you have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, kids that you love? Not even related to you, some of them. They can't defend their rights. Liberty is not a gift that you secure for yourself. It's an obligation to them. And the greatest power that we have is the power of peaceful non-compliance. How many of you know people who say, "Oh, it's too late. We're done as America. We're like Rome in its last days. We have not yet begun to fight. We have an authority. We have an authority as creators of the government to control our creation, to set it back on its path, its singular purpose to secure our rights. We have an obligation to do that. We have an authority to do that. We have a way to do that peacefully. But we have a power to do that by the nature of our creation and from where our rights come. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Folks, we have a power. We have an obligation. We have a posterity waiting for us out there in the future to say, we will not comply. So we can be free? And I just need to know, who here is willing to stand? You see, when one stands, they're no longer alone. Abigail Adams, one of my favorite founding mothers, if you will, Founding fathers. Married to John Adams. Big book. Seen in the background when I had my studio facing the other wall. Big book of John Adams over there. Well worth the read. His wife, Abigail Adams. Her name is Mercios. I can't even pronounce her name. Merciotus Warren said, "The flame is kindled, and like lightning, we watch as it spreads from soul to soul." The flame is kindled, and like lightning, we watch it as it spreads from soul to soul, she said. Those who stood. We, folks, have an undisciplined government. We've had it for decades. And they don't like it that we're now waking up. You know what the true wokeism is? I am awake to the fact that our government is undisciplined and has fallen out of line with what it was created to be. When you know this, you are truly awake. And the government doesn't like the fact that we're waking up. They don't like it that we're demanding to be heard. And that we've raised a spoiled brat is what we've done. Representative government that needs to be taken to the woodshed. So don't think because it's not going to happen in a day, don't think because it might cost you a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit more, that it's not worth it. We have to just ask ourselves, what do we want? What do we want our children to have? Are you satisfied with a government that owns you, owns your business, can tell you when and where to leave your house and under what conditions you can leave your house? Or do you want more because we have a chance to fight? When our victory is sure, we have a chance to fight without bloodshed. But every time we comply, we establish a future where our children will not have that option. If you want to sustain the fight for liberty, this can't be what you do. It has to be who you are. Do you feel empowered by the truth? Do you see that it's your duty? And that it rests in every individual not to secure the rights for yourself, but for the future generations? Our founders said time and time again, we're doing this for the ages. And we got to let go of the radio audience. Radio audience, thank you for being here. Live long and prosper. Everybody else, stick around for the Captain's Cabin.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here. Hey, folks, welcome to the Captain's Habit it. Easy for me to say, huh? Welcome to the Captain's Cabin, our after show. And we're not going to go very long tonight. But I want you to know that in talking about this stuff, I am. I am moved. Let me back that whole thing up. There's something completely different. I have seven conflicting thoughts in my head right now. The first I look at is this. You can gauge this by what you mean. I'm not butthurt by this or anything, but I look at the numbers for the show. There's 9 people in the chat room. I don't know. There's many more listening, but there's 9 people in the chat room. Those numbers are usually, when we're doing a regular show, can be up into the 30s and the 40s. Just in the chat room. But it's interesting to me that now I might be wrong on this, but when we start talking about stuff like this, people tune it out. This is that political stuff, isn't it? I don't want to hear this. I got other things to do. I got a show to watch. I got to eat. I got to do something. And it becomes a thing where these things are so unimportant that people phase them out. They don't want to hear it. Oh, that's your opinion. I'm going to tell you something. None of this stuff I've said tonight is opinion. This is all the fact about our Constitution, what it was meant to do. I may have laced some of my own opinion about my own take on things in there, but the facts of the matter are this, that is not opinion that I gave you tonight. That is the fact. The last 3 nights that we've been doing this. Not in a row necessarily, but the last 3 nights that we've done this. And so think about that. It doesn't attract people. I got the same thing in ministry. When I was in ministry, people didn't necessarily want to hear things that they were supposed to be doing. They wanted to have their ears tickled. It's like the old ditty that talks about, I want to buy $2 worth of God, please. Not enough to disturb my soul or disturb my slumber or stir my soul, but enough to equal a cup of warm milk or tea in the shade under a shade tree. I'd like to buy $2 worth of God in a paper sack. I'd like to buy $2 worth of God, please. And this is the way we are about these things about our country. Oh, it's all going to fix itself. It'll be fine. It looks bad now, but it always comes around. We're complacent. We need to take a stand on what we believe. This is where I swear I might get a little preachy tonight. And there it is. So think about that. Think about that. So we got Michael is here. I'm going to bring him in. Hey, Michael, we're not going to stick around too long tonight, but
I'm
good to have you, brother.
Constitution always is a big part of me. I enjoy it, and that's what I'm saying. And you're right. They basically buy them off for a price of an MRAD or something other. Then they say, oh, you have to make your speed limit this, or you don't get any federal highway money. And the federal government took on a body of its own that it was never intended for.
Right.
Like you said, it was made for like peace delegations go to war. And at one time they only had Congress, every 4 to 6 years.
Yep.
And now you got people who have a second home in DC because they are a career politician.
Well, look at the number of politicians we've had that have been in Congress for decades. So, yeah.
Yeah. You look at them, and you even have people now who they're so old that it looks like they have a stroke on TV. And not
Yeah.
just, the commander in chief, but, supposed to be the whip or whatever, the majority leader. He's out to lunch. I said they need to be two things: term limits and age limits. Because as you get so old, you won't have a 90-year-old man running, a corporation. Owners.
By the way, Philip Blair put this up. I became convinced that non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that.
Yeah.
So.
That's 100% right.
Good quote.
And
Philip Blair.
You know how they keep people compliant. Here a while back, I was watching and they said, it's up next to you. They had a National Guard unit, Air National Guard, landing A-10 warthogs on the roads to show their capabilities. Why would you need to show the capabilities unless you're trying, a scare tactic?
Right.
And that's what I told people.
Right.
I said, why else would you be doing that kind of drill, in the public for like that?
Yeah.
Most of the training was done behind closed doors because you don't want people to know your tactics.
That's right.
And it's the states of the power too. It started out with 13 colonies, and each one of them. That's the reason you have a state constitution and a federal constitution. That's what I'll tell you Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And people forget that there's a lot of power in the states that the federal government don't even have.
Yeah.
I knew, the sheriff here in our county very well. Good man, you know what I'm saying? And he said there would never be federal troops in his county. He don't need to show power. You know what I'm saying? He's like, why would I?
Why would I? Exactly.
And it's but like I said, they get bought off with new toys. Oh, if you don't comply with us, you do not get
the new toys. You won't get these new toys.
Or worse than that, they try to buy them out, and it's and they do that to a lot of the states. That's the reason you see either 65 or 70 mile an hour. That's how come the speed limit was stuck at 55 for years. Unless you make your state speed limit 55 miles an hour, you get no federal, highway money, or whatever they call it. And I was like, but like I said, it's just ballooned out of control. They created the beast, then it grew. It's like the gremlins that you fed after midnight. It's like,
right.
Where does it stop?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you got backdoor deals.
These are the things, like I've been saying for 3 nights now.
Yeah.
These are the things where we have to recognize it. We have to take control of it. We have to understand what our duty is as citizens. So, but hey, a more important question. Have you talked to Wendy today? How did Wendy do with her procedure today?
I talked to her briefly. She was tired, and and I told her I'd get up with her tomorrow. If you don't do well with the stuff it puts you under. But she said her doctor was very compassionate, and he told her, said,
"That's good.
I'll be the last one you see and the first one you see when you wake up." And she said, "Michael, he was there."
That's good.
She said Michael would be here, but it's holding my hand if he could, but waiting on a passport.
Sure.
They said Halloween. I said, good.
Wow.
Anything is possible with enough money.
At least you don't have to get a shot to go over there now. So
yeah, and that's crazy. And and I tell people, even with that, I told them, I said, it's my body, my choice. They said, oh, not on this occasion. That only works for certain things. I said, but I'm sovereign? Am I a person that I should be able to make the choice of not getting a jab in my arm? And I told him, I said, when I was in the Army, I was inoculated for everything. What else do y'all have that y'all could possibly get me? And they couldn't tell me. And and I know my doctor now. He told me, he said, no, Michael, you don't want that shit rolling around your body.
That's
and
right.
They're having people fall over with heart attacks.
And now they got new stuff out that's teaching you how to eradicate that from your body and overcome it giving you problems. So,
yeah, somebody told me that there's a private lab that these people who did that to travel. It's basically like a dialysis machine. They pump in one side and try to clean all of that out and put it back in your body. But I'm thinking, no, that ain't going to work. Like I said, I'm trying not to say too much about that because, YouTube still.
Well, I will tell you this. I was going to mention that. There's not a lot we can say about that. I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm afraid of having my show banned and all my videos taken down because YouTube wants to control what I say. Now, they're not a government entity, but they got the government that will back them up. I would like to see somebody take this to court and or take this into legislation that says you can't prevent people from expressing themselves freely unless it's violating the law of the land, the Constitution. So people say, well, then why can't you have pedophiles saying something? Because that violates the law of the land. That's different.
Yeah.
So.
The same reason.
Well, hey, I hate to say it. As much as we haven't done a captain's cabin much lately, I have got to go. I've got shenanigans and things going on upstairs that I got to get up to. And Sean, sorry for cursing.
Sean. Is it his first time here? He hasn't met us, has he?
No, he's been here a lot.
Yeah, Friday night I called Scotty after he got out there. I was like, I'll be in trouble in the morning. And boy, was I. She's like, oh. She said, did you know what you sounded like? I was like, no, but I'm sure you will tell me.
Yes.
But but she's doing well. And
good.
And her friends. And I was going to tell you, and everybody probably knows Henry. I was going to tell you, Henry is with his favorite setter. Henry's doing well.
That's good.
But no, she looked hard, and but I'm just glad to have it over with.
Good.
She's been sick for a while, and maybe this will clear it up.
Hopefully, this will do it. This will do the trick. I hope.
They told her if this don't fix it, we don't know what to do next.
Right.
And that's
hopefully this will have something. See you, Randall Flagg. Thanks for being here, brother.
Oh, my grandfather. Oh, who else did he say to Philip Blair before we jump out here? He said, my grandfather served in the Pacific Theater in World War II. After drafting him into the Army, the government made him be circumcised, worried about tropical diseases, apparently.
Circumscribed.
Yeah.
I think that was just a typo. Circumcised, yes.
Well,
unless you were making fun of the word.
When I joined, but anyway, I don't think I'd raise my right hand for that one. Be like, nope, I don't think so.
And of course, when you enlist in the armed forces, you are giving them the right to do certain things over you. You're relinquishing right.
Oh yeah.
And so you still have rights as a citizen, but there are certain things you have to fall under.
Yeah.
So anyway,
yeah.
Typo.
Like
LOL.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, Michael, we got to get out of here. I got to get out of here.
Yes,
so I'm going to let you go, brother. And we will talk soon. Have a good night. Hey, everybody. Not an abrupt ending, just shorter than normal. I got to get upstairs. I got to do some stuff with the family here before everybody's in the land of Nod. And so all of you, thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of my life, part of this show. I promise we're going to lighten up on Friday. Won't be so heavy-handed into the constitutional law. And we'll probably talk about ghosts or something like that. Some of the other fun interests I have, and I know that you all have. So, hey, Roger Rabbit. And everybody, if I didn't say hello to everybody tonight, it's not for any other reason than I just jumped right into the show. So, thanks for being here, everybody. And we'll see you later. You have a good Thursday tomorrow. We'll catch you on Friday. Talk soon. Live long and prosper.